What is up, folks? It is time. It's the High Tech Podcast. We're back for another week of high-tech hijinks and fun and technology, and possibly Will and I will make more predictions about the future. Who knows? I don't know. See, that was funny, right? Because I said we'd make more predictions about the future, but then I said I don't know. I thought I might need to explain that joke for a hot second.
Great.
It's always funnier when you explain your jokes. Anyway, I am Josh, and I'm joined by Will here. We are both the hosts of the High Tech Podcast. We're happy to have you for another week. And we've got some fun conversations ahead of us today, Will. I think we're gonna have some robot-y AI type of conversations because no one else in the world is talking about it. So we decided we should.
But we're doing it. So
yeah, we're doing it.
You know?
I guess. No,
if you don't want to listen to AI, tune out.
Yeah, exactly. I think we should just make AI write the podcast from now on. That should be the High Tech Podcast premise. AI writes each episode.
Okay.
You know?
So you're joking, but I'm thinking we should do something like do an episode
like have an episode written by AI.
Run by the AI. Yeah.
Generate podcasts with AI now. Did you know that? Like you can just generate a podcast with AI. This is the whole
Why
thing.
do we even do this?
I don't know. Because here's the thing I thought of. I was like, why don't we take the creative things people love doing and make a robot do it? That would be fun.
Right.
Anyway,
exactly.
Sorry.
Take
That's
all
all
the
we're going to
joy.
talk about this week. Before we get into all of that, just a reminder, make sure to subscribe, like, hit the bell, whatever the things are that people say that are cooler creators than Will and I are. Make sure to subscribe to the High Tech Podcast. It helps us out, and we love hearing from you. You can find us on socials at High Tech Podcast, or some others are at High Tech Pod. Suck it up. You can find them. It's fine. Email inbox at hightechpod.us. If you'd like to be on the podcast, you have some thoughts about what I just said about our socials. You're afraid of robots. I don't know. You can email us, and we'd love to talk to you. Also, find us on our website, hightechpod.us. We'd love to for you to find the episode page. I don't know. I got distracted by what you're writing in the notes for a hot second. Stuff. I'm like a squirrel. So now we have an episode page for every episode with links and things that are great. Make sure to check that out. It'll all be worth it. Okay, enough of that. That was too hard. See, we should get AI to write a podcast. It'd be great. We should side note. I'll just throw this out here. We'll put a squirrel on the screen if anybody was curious. Not a real one. That would be crazy. Like Will just pulls out a real squirrel and is like, "Look, I got a pet." His name is Nuts. And then it puts him down. Like that's just the.
Oh, it's perfect. It perfectly derailed us. And we named the squirrel Nuts.
Listen, it's a great name for a squirrel. It's a great name. I'm just throwing out ideas. I don't know. Maybe AI did write this episode. What I was about to say is we should get an AI like, how people have people behind the camera that talk sometimes. We should make an AI assistant that's the producer and never tell anyone that it's actually AI. Like we create an entire character. And that's like
it just asks us questions and stuff.
Yeah. We show pictures of it too. We generate pictures. Like it's a whole thing. I love this idea. I've admitted it live in this episode, but like now people are gonna wonder if somebody else joins the podcast, are they real? Like that's gonna be.
So as much as you're laughing about this, and it's kind of an exciting idea, the latter half of this episode is going to talk about how we could make this real.
Oh no,
this is possible.
This is possible.
It's
not
possible.
Out of the realm of possibility anymore.
Oh
sorry,
no.
Okay. That is not what we're here to talk about AI on the podcast. We're here to talk about, at least not that just yet. Literally as we're talking, I get a notification going, enhance Miro with AI. Shut up. I don't want to hear you right now. This is not the time. Okay, we're back on track, back on the rails. You, me, and Nuts. Sorry. Okay, continue. We're getting back on the train. We wanted to specifically talk about with AI in this episode. We've talked a handful of times about AI in the podcast, and we kind of took a break because everybody was talking about it. It was getting kind of annoying. And I love people who now are just making fun of companies that put AI onto things because they're like, it has nothing to do with AI. Right. But I think one thing that is helpful is Will and I have been doing a handful of things in our work environments, finding ways that AI can kind of cut back on some of the manual effort that we've been doing before that we kind of just wanted to take a little bit of time in the podcast to share. And then a decent segment in this episode about an app that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, just because of there's something really cool that dropped in the AI world recently that Will and I have a lot of ideas about how it could be used. And we wanted to give a little bit of a shout out to what it is and talk a little bit about it on the podcast. But before that, AI to save time. Will, how have you been using AI to save yourself some time during work in your learning and development job experience? I don't know why I said that.
Honestly, it's one of those things that's an oxymoron in a sense. Like, I'm still working and I end up putting
I hope so.
sincere right. I end up putting sincere amount of time into things still, even though I'm using AI. So even this afternoon, like this, I didn't want this to be the topic of this episode, but I just did it. I've been doing other things, but like I spent about an hour and a half working on a spreadsheet this afternoon. And I used AI the entire time. Right. And I was trying to build a report and I was trying to understand it. I have a lot of data and whatever. But where in the past, if I had wanted to do certain kinds of evaluations and stuff of this document, I would have had to do a lot of Googling and LinkedIn Learning and YouTubing and whatever to try and figure out formulas and stuff. Because at the very core of the task I was at this afternoon, I wanted to measure multiple points of data at once. I wanted one cell to include an evaluation of multiple courses. And so I wanted to kind of pull that all in one spot. And then I need to build it into a dashboard. It's doing a lot of math based on each of these numbers but every step of the way, I'm just kind of telling GPT or, my LLM, like what I'm doing, what I'm trying to work on. And it's helping me get to a solution that, if not for ChatGPT, what I did in an hour and a half would have taken me probably the afternoon or a whole day to just really refine, make sure the math was working, make sure and of course I have to do some stuff to check it when GPT comes up with math solutions, but it worked. It did it. Now, that's something that I was doing today. I had to build a course towards the end of 2024 where there wasn't a single piece. There was not one element of the course that I published that wasn't touched by AI. I used it to help me write the knowledge checks. I used it to help me write the scripts with my SMEs. I used it to create the visual media. All of the videos and stuff were AI generated. We used an avatar. I used AI to help me create like the visual experience and the aesthetic. Like there's every single piece of that. And I've said this kind of different contexts, but a number of times before, like when you think about recording a video, and back in the day, quote unquote, before AI, if I wanted to create a talking head video, that was going to take me 40 hours. It was going to take me a work week. Like, maybe not exactly, but like, it was going to take days and days and days of effort. I was going to have to get somebody in front of the camera and get them to record 1, 2, 5 different takes. I was going to have to edit that video. I was going to have made the plan and written the script before it. All that kind of stuff that goes into video production with a real human being. I use at work a platform called Synthesia. All I need is the script. And once I've got the script written, I plug that into the platform, it generates the rest of the content. I have to watch and listen to, the pronunciation because AI still sucks at that. But like, once the script is written, the video is created in the course of an hour. And that was not possible before I was using an AI tool like this. So a couple of specifics, right? Whether it's Excel or video creation, but I'm using these kinds of AI tools to cut back the manual effort so that when it's like that video, more of my time is spent on writing the good script and making sure the learning knowledge checks are relevant to the actual content. Like I can spend a lot of time with the text and the knowledge content of everything instead of having to focus on or spend time on before literally doing 3 or 4 or 5 takes with my talking head, right? Or, so I've had it happen before in recording where you realize something was wrong after all the takes. And you have to retake again. These are good examples. Now, they're more specific to my work, right? I deal in a lot of data, or I have to create a lot of videos. But like folks can be using AI, especially for manual effort, just to evaluate spreadsheets, right? If you just threw kind of content into an AI platform, be like, hey, how many times or what's the percentage of success rate, right, for learners that take this course who are under a certain like academic status or under a certain level at the company, right? Depending on if you have, status and ranking and stuff like that. You can just ask GPT the question, what is this if based on this data? Depends on the platform, which ones can take certain things, but I'm just loving it. If there's something that you take a lot of time to do, like, one thing I know that's common in corporate context or all contexts is like mail merge and mailing lists, right? So you got to take a list of names and addresses, put them into something, and then send out physical mail to people. It's a pretty static or consistent practice in corporate or in business, but a lot of times, unless you have that well established in your organization, I've even seen in the last 3 months, like my wife looking at a list of names where the names were not in first and last name order. They were like last name, comma, first
100%.
name, or they're in two separate columns, or there's all sorts of things that happen when people try to keep track of names and lists. Dude, there's some Excel tools that can help you with that, but just throw it in GPT and say, hey, take all this, make sure, row one, A and B, and this is it, and make them one list for me and put them into a mail merge context so that we can import them into Microsoft Word and print them. It just does it in a second. Last example, I've been rolling here. I didn't know I had this many examples, but last example that comes to mind. Transcripts, right? So like subtitles and captions for videos.
Good example.
One of those, this actually comes back around to the first example I started with. This course that I worked on at the end of the year, I forgot about this part of it. The video was sent to me as a 45-minute video, but we determined we didn't need, minutes 3 to 7 and minutes 22 to 25. So we cut those two sections out. And then I chunked it up into the rest of the segment. So it became, instead of one video, it became 6 videos. Well, now the transcript is irrelevant because transcripts are time-stamped. Not with GPT. I put the transcript in. I told it the math. I removed minutes, minute and second this to this, and minute and second this to this. And then I said, section 1 is this, section 2 is this, section 3. And it exported in the correct VTT or SRT format for me the transcript with the mathematic change from minute to minute. Because originally, section 3 went from minute 12 to 15. Well, that's now minute 1 to 3. It did the math for me
it messed up
changed all the timestamps. So I just had to write one prompt, test it, and then ran all the transcripts through it, and it magically changed everything for me. I mean, changing transcripts like that, it's almost useless to go back through and do it manually. You may as well just type it back into the video or something after the fact. Like, there's tons and tons of ways to just use this tool to do the manual stuff for you that you don't need to take that effort for.
Those are some of the examples I was going to use. Like a big one for me, because of my context looking a bit different, right? Like we're not at the place where we're generating a ton of audio in the situation I'm in right now, that we're investigating some places to look at it. Much like normal higher ed, they move a little bit slower, and some people are a little terrified of voices being created. But I've used some. I mean, Will and I used that in projects to do stuff, and it saved a ton of time. So that's a big one. And we've talked about it in the podcast several times before. So I think the biggest one for me is like using AI is basically an assistant. Like, that's really the flow I've gotten into, is where, like, to your point, like I need to reformat stuff, or I need to change something, or I just need a different take on the way I wrote this. You know what I mean? Like I want something I wish I just had somebody sitting next to me that I could just like give what I wrote and go basically say, write this a different way, so I can just kind of see it in a different format, or like see it in a different way, right? Like things like that. That's where I found myself using AI a lot in those spaces, is to like have it. And I'm very passionate about, in most cases in AI, with the exception of stuff like audio generation, things like that. Like I want to create it first and then have AI take out the manual effort later, as opposed to, other than maybe like some brainstorming ideas and stuff. Will and I've used that in the podcast a couple times. We like hit a wall.
Right.
We're trying to figure out some kind of topic around this idea. We literally just ask like an AI tool to spit out a bunch of options, and it spawns other ideas for us. We usually don't even end up taking the ideas AI gave us. It's like, oh, that's a thing. Yes, you're right. What about this? And like we go a different direction. But that also has been super helpful. So like, but yeah, to Will's point, like formatting, I needed stuff in like a comma separated format a while back, like a couple weeks ago, a whole bunch of data. And I just highlighted it all, used my AI tool to reformat it all into comma separated formatting. My favorite is when you need to get rid of duplicates in content. Like AI is great at that. Just tell AI to go get rid of, like, give me the individual names out of this list. Like stuff like that, you know, that's super easy to do. And like to Will's point, ChatGPT, especially now, can like output stuff in file formats, especially the paid versions. And querying data, it's a great at that. Like if you, especially like custom AI knowledge base tools or chat GPTs that you can get access to, they're super helpful for cutting down time when you're trying to find an answer to something that you would normally run down. Like again, this is joking, we don't actually get this. We get $1 for every time Notion's mentioned. This is one of the things I think Notion has leaned so well into their AI tool, that they understand at a certain level they're a knowledge tool where people put a lot of information in it. And so they really leaned heavily on two things with AI, kind of the writing assistant idea of AI and the kind of information query area of AI. So I can ask my AI assistant in that tool, do I have anything on this? Have I mentioned this idea? And I'll get back information, like a summarized version of what I've written in other places with citations from my own content. So I can go into my own content and find that information. That has saved me hours of time sometimes just searching around, because I know that I wrote something in a note somewhere on this idea, but I didn't tag it well enough in my database. So I don't remember what project it's about. I just know those words entered a digital piece of paper somewhere, and I don't remember what it was related to.
Go Notion, find it for me.
Super helpful, yeah. Summarizing, pulling things down, that's also where it's been super helpful for me. I think that saved me a lot of time. And to Will's point, we're in the process of figuring out how we can set up a solution that like our team can ask questions about our guides, our knowledge base, and our courses from a tool that will query data for us, like an AI tool. And I think that's a lot of businesses, I think, are starting to get a realization that that's where one of the superpowers of AI is right now, is if they can get the right type of thing connected into their knowledge bases, they can leverage it to get answers from their own content. Way faster than they could before. Essentially like creating an assistant, a Google assistant for yourself, but only focused on your information. I think that's super helpful when it comes to like cutting down time. But yeah, in learning and development, I think it's the biggest thing, like you said, Will, the audio thing. If you're in learning and development and you're not investigating how to use AI audio generation tools to cut down content creation, and especially video, like video AI generation has come leagues in the last 6 months. Like you need to start looking into those things. There's a lot of time saving that can be cut there with stuff that's just like, it's not taking away the instructor value in the content or in the training. But like there's so many times in learning and development that you're like looking at a video and you're like, it is great that this guy is talking, but I really wish I had a visual of this type of scene or this type of thing in the video that I could kind of just play for a second or 30 seconds while he's talking and then go back to him, you know, in the video, right? AI's gotten to the point now you can generate that stuff. Like, and it looks pretty decent. Like, and you're throwing it into the video. That seems small, but it takes a video from mediocre to really good very quickly when you're getting that type of stuff in there. And it just saves so much time. In the past, you might have to pay a software to get access to stock video that you end up overusing in your videos, or you'd have to go out and get that yourself, and that would take time. So I think that's a big cutback. But I think just for the average person, I think what Will said, it's using AI to reformat and clean up content and information that you would normally take forever to do. Helping with stuff like coding, like Excel, in those areas, information. Helping. I just think organizing and writing for the average person is the biggest thing. And I'm not a proponent, and we're working with, like, I have people that I know who are not the same proponents of this that I go head to head with, which is that, like, I'm not a proponent of just being like, AI, write this for me. But I am a proponent of, like, an assistant type of vibe makes the time go so much quicker when I write something. Or, like, I might not have a lot of time to really wordsmith something that I need to get together really quickly. I don't think there's any problem, and I've done this several times, where I just word vomit my thoughts onto a page, and then I say, AI assistant, improve this, make it clearer, make sure these points are there. And I hit enter and I go do something else while it's finishing the writing, like, and I come back over and it's done. And I edit it. Like, it's not always, it's never perfect. But in the past, I probably would have spent forever looking at the paragraph to wordsmith it. And some people would say, well, that's good, you should be doing it. And you're right, in some areas. I'm not going to do that if I'm writing a book that's supposed to be just from me. But when I'm writing an email to Joe Schmo that we're both going to forget about in 2 days, I don't care that I had AI help clean it up so I didn't spend forever trying to figure out how to write a sentence in a way that didn't come across mean, even though internally I want to be mean. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that stuff seems small, but it saves me so much time throughout the day, in many ways. So I think those are some of the cool tools to be looking
at. Big skill to add to these technical, these very task based, the things we're suggesting, and you know, organizing is very generic, but like a big skill that I've been applying to my AI work is actually telling it to ask me questions on my task. Right. So it's not something that's like, it seems a little benign, but yeah, in my task today, I was working on the spreadsheet stuff and I was giving it parameters, giving it information. I said, and please make sure to ask me questions if you don't understand something. It came back with 3 questions that was actually useful in making sure it, again, because if it didn't ask me a question and it takes the data and does something wrong with it, I might think that I've got the right information, but the data is wrong because it didn't understand it itself. So it asked me those questions back, but like, you can do that in a couple different contexts. Like this point of kind of curiosity and questioning with AI tools is super powerful. You can have AI give you a mock interview. You know, you just be like, hey, AI, act like an interviewer for Walmart. I'm applying to be a cashier. What questions could you ask me? And then it'll ask you questions about being a cashier at Walmart, like whatever it is. But that's a useful thing to make sure you, like, we often think about put something into AI and get something out. Sometimes the thing to put into AI is to get questions back and to brainstorm and think through with yourself that way.
It's a good idea.
You know, like you're saying, you know, you word vomit and then you have it proof it. You could also ask it, like, is there anything that would help this sound nicer, or is there something I could remove from it? Like, ask it a question directly, and it could be like, well, here's your overall, and maybe if you added this line it would help. Like, you're just giving it a chance to kind of not only think in the context of what you were thinking, but you're prompting it. And this, actually, I will step back, I guess, a little bit to say, you're prompting it to think through what it should be asking you based on what I would say as another recommendation, a role you've assigned it. Every time I start a chat with GPT, you know, any of the LLMs, I tell it what I want it to be doing. I tell it it's a coder. I tell it it's a proofreader. I give it a role.
Yeah.
So when I'm asking that question, it's not just like, hey, GPT, search the internet for my answer. You know, it's like, no, GPT, I want you to be an expert cashier at Walmart. Ask me questions that a cashier at Walmart needs to answer. And that's one of those things. So definitely bring that curiosity to it.
But it does get you closer, right? Like one of my other favorite things to do is, if I'm really trying to see if I'm being clear in something, right? Is I will write something and then have it role play telling me the point, or actually in L&D, this is a great way to do testing. Write your instructions for something and have AI try to complete the activity and see if it's anywhere close to the writing. Like see what it like,
Oh
or
my gosh.
ask it to interpret your assignment, right? Because I've been seeing people do this to test whether their thing is AI proof or not. But like the reverse is like it's a great testing tool. Like I'll like when I'm preparing for like some kind of speaking that I'm going to be doing or teaching or something I've written. There have been times I've written something and I will ask my AI assistant tool that I use that's using OpenAI in the background. Basically say, hey, what do you think the main point of what this says is? Give it to me in a sentence and why. Like why did you say this? And yes, it's just an algorithm responding. It's not a person. But at the same time, almost always that highlights for something I wrote in that paragraph that I didn't interpret that way. But then when it does interpret it a certain way, I'll go, oh, yeah, okay, I could see how I didn't clarify that there, or me saying that could be interpreted this way. And so it really helps me just clean some of that stuff up. I think, right? So there's a lot of different ways to use it. We did not give ourselves enough time to talk about all of it, so we'll definitely be coming back to it as well. But with that said, I think it's time. You know, we've talked for. This would be a lot more convenient if we had talked for 10 minutes. I just would like you to know. It'd be like we've talked for 10 minutes. It's almost 11. We should look at. Let's pretend that's what happened. Okay, so there's my journey. No, we have
transition.
We have talked about this app before on the podcast, and the real question is when have we talked about it? As I'm looking it up at this moment, but this app is called ElevenLabs. It's an app that Will and I have used a lot in the past. In the work we were doing some e-learning, and ElevenLabs was our choice. Is ElevenLabs still something you've used at work? Is that still? You were the one who got me into ElevenLabs. You were the one who suggested it to our client when they were like, we didn't plan for how we were going to do the audio for the e-learnings. And we were like,
they planned to have one person record all of the different voices.
All the different voices. So and we were like, that's not going to work. And the different
French language. It was. I haven't used it as much. Once I got Synthesia, I stick to Synthesia because
you're using that generally for a lot of different.
We pay for it, and it does both the avatars and the voices. So
yeah.
And
so anyway,
one or the other.
If you're curious, our original conversation about ElevenLabs was in episode 122, which is crazy that it's been that long since we talked about ElevenLabs. We roasted Microsoft apparently in that episode, so that was a fun episode. So you check that out. Episode 122. But ElevenLabs is super great. We used it on that project for a ton of e-learning content, and actually bilingual content. It was both in French and English. And ElevenLabs nailed it. And since then, I've used ElevenLabs and some other competitors, and I will admit that ElevenLabs is my favorite still at this point. Okay. I think it's the most solid I've used, other than like stuff like Synthesia, where you've got like other stuff features tied into it, right? Yeah. But we've also used ElevenLabs in a tool IORAD that we have used all the time. They use ElevenLabs for their AI voice generation now, and it got much better the second they switched over to ElevenLabs. So like I really like ElevenLabs. There's a lot of features to it, but ElevenLabs, what we've used so far has been to generate audio. So we'll throw script content in there. We might tweak the audio. We'll find a fun voice for our Space Pirate course that we did that we showed on here at some point in episode 162 of the podcast. We used ElevenLabs to generate the pirate voices in that learning. So if you want to check that out, go to harnesstech.us. It's super funny and great. Or you can check out that episode. We also link there. But anyway, we used ElevenLabs for that. But ElevenLabs recently, and actually now that I'm saying this, I should have kept the LinkedIn message that got me there up so I can remember. I
tried looking it up, didn't find it very quickly. It's Chris Hodgson, but
yeah. So Chris Hodgson originally put us onto this. It's a guy that we both follow who does storyline e-learning development, and is super good at it, much better than Will and I. But he posted just a couple weeks ago that ElevenLabs released this feature called conversational AI Which if you're listening to this, you're like, how is that much different from what you were just describing to us? It is, trust me. But basically this feature that they released is this idea. Now, the way they package it on the website, right, is it's basically agent AI, which people have been talking a lot about recently. Which is this idea of like verbal AI conversation. Somebody people can have conversations with. It's an LLM that's connected into your knowledge base. It can be a support agent. It can answer questions for people. It can actually have live conversations with people. And it's super cool that it is able to do this, right? So, and you can do different things. We'll link to their website that talks about it for conversational AI, but you can actually try a call with people on their website, which is pretty cool. But in general, the AI idea is a user can talk to that AI. That AI connects into your LLM, which connects into your database and all of your information, basically the brain of your organization, and can then respond back to that person with information like they're talking to a person. Right. Now, if you're not working in support and you're just doing learning and development or slightly different things, you might be like, okay, that's cool, but why does that matter to me? I do have an element of my job that works in support, so I think that part is also super cool, and I think Will probably does too. I would love to have an AI assistant that can just talk to people, so we don't have to hear from those people who are like, why didn't you call me back? And I'll go, because it's 2025. But that's super cool. But you can then also connect this thing into other things, right? And so what Chris Hodgins, and I realized his blog post has the date. He posted this at the beginning of December. So this has been out for a little bit, but not much, is you do actually have the ability to connect this into other things like Storyline, or he gives an example, they're working on how to plug it into WordPress. So it can be like on a website type of vibe. And not be like a support agent, but actually be like a learning support aid, right? So, for instance, Chris posts this video on his blog, and I'm only going to show a second of it because I'd rather you just go to his blog to see it yourself, and we'll put the link on the website. But because I think describing this is difficult, right? Like we're trying to describe it, you just need to see it. So, for those listening, it's going to sound like we brought somebody else onto the podcast. But we didn't. It's a thing. Don't worry. But those watching, I would encourage checking this out, watching it as well. It's pretty cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and share this here, Will, and let's bring it up and have a little bit of fun. Okay, so this is Chris Hodges' blog post, and he's giving an example of what he did in just I think a demo course. It says it there. So this is what he does. So let's just give this a second here.
Hi, how can I help you with your learning today?
Hi, my name's Chris. Can you hear me?
Hi, Chris. I can hear you loud and clear. I'm so excited to help you learn about the American bald eagle.
So real quick, both of them are British, which is great. Why does everybody use British voices as examples for AI? I just like to point that out.
They're so welcoming.
Like no one has picked a hillbilly. You know what I mean? Like nobody has gotten like a response back from like a really crazy voice. Anyway, sorry. So one of those voices you're hearing is not a person. It's AI. The one who's talking about teaching them about a bald eagle. If you're just listening, for those of you watching, you can see this. There's a little icon down at the bottom of this bald eagle course that he's created. That when they hit listen to me and then they start talking, the AI responds back to them. And what happens next is pretty sick. Like it teaches them about.
Could you tell me a bit about what they like to eat?
Of course. Bald eagles are amazing hunters. They typically eat fish, but they'll also eat small mammals, reptiles, and even other birds.
So does that mean things like mice?
Like it's literally telling them what a bald eagle eats. Like that voice was the AI voice for those just listening. And it's literally describing to this learner what a bald, just based off of its question, right? There's information about the bald eagle on the storyline slide, but this person wanted to know more, or they had a specific question. So they open it up, they ask the question, what does a bald eagle eat? And this voice starts responding back to them in perfect cadence, just describing the answer to their question. Sorry, well, you were going to say something before I jumped in there.
Ironically, it's about interruption. So there's a little note on the AI agent or whatever that says like interrupt me if you want to. So it starts talking, and once Chris starts speaking again, it finishes a line or so, like a word or two, but it stops. It recognizes that someone has begun speaking again. It stops and begins listening to hear his question and then responds again. So like, not only like, one of the things you could think here is, oh, they have a bunch of canned phrases, and if the right keyword is said, it sends out a canned phrase. Nope. No, it is auto generating no matter what he's asking. And so much so that it has to listen. Like, it stops talking, it switches to listening, and then it will wait for him to finish talking to speak back. Like, there's not, it's a miracle, not just because of how amazing this is, and it's cool to have it talk back to you, but like, to train the thing to listen, to train the thing to respond once someone else has taken a break, to train, like, all those things are features. It's not just like, oh, we taught it to be human. No, they didn't teach it to be human. They studied how humans speak and how we even interrupt each other, and then they've built that functionality into the bot. Like, that's a part of the algorithm. It's fascinating how quickly it's working, and the only thing that could make this be possible, though, is like Josh was saying, this bot is connected to the database of information about bald eagles, or if the website's larger and the content's about all animals, right? It has to have some corpus of information. It's not necessarily going and checking the internet for the answer. It's checking its local database of information to make sure, because if you have anything check the internet, your answers could be anywhere. It has to be limited to some sort of set of information to keep it honest, to keep it accurate. But that's also, I think, how they've built it so that it can be so quick. I mean, it's having a natural conversation with Chris as he asks questions. It's fascinating.
Yeah, that was the thing that impressed me the most about it, was the way they interrupted, and it was able to respond them back to their question, right? And I was talking to a coworker about this. We're considering redesigning and developing one of the training courses we have about Canvas. And I was like, imagine if this was plugged in to that course, and an instructor has a question about how to set something up in a course that is more contextual. We didn't answer that in the course, but we definitely have an extensive knowledge base for faculty about these types of things. Imagine that connected into that type of thing, and it being able to just give them the contextual answer in the course before they move on. Or if they don't understand something, they don't have to wait for somebody to answer them back later. They can ask that question to that thing, right? So this gets at some of the stuff we've talked about on the podcast before, where we've talked about like AI tutor concepts. We've talked about more personalized learning experiences. This is where I think at the learning side of things, AI is super powerful. And Chris talks about this in his post, in his blog. ElevenLabs is just jumped themselves up to the front of the line in this realm by what they've accomplished here, because it's actually super easy to create this thing. The one last thing I want to show in this blog, and we'll link to this on the website, Chris does a fantastic job at breaking down step by step how he did this. Literally, he was inputting information into their website, and he notes it's really easy to do, and then get the information, and he gives you the JavaScript you need in Storyline to do this. So if you're a Storyline developer, the link will give you. Now, I know there's paid plans with ElevenLabs. As far as I understand, I think you can get access to at least to try this for free. And Chris gives you everything you need in this blog post, which we'll link on our website for this episode, to learn how to do that. So you want to check that out. And that's in Storyline. So there's a lot of other ways to do things, but that was a super cool just way that I saw it through ElevenLabs. And honestly, it's one of the easiest ways. He notes this in his blog post that like ChatGPT has options for this. It's not like it doesn't exist, and you can create custom GPTs that can do similar ideas to this. But the way it just interfaces and connects into like an e-learning environment, I have not seen anything that does quite this just yet. I'm sure other people will have it soon. Yeah. But we've really liked ElevenLabs with the other stuff we've done with them. They're a really solid app who, in my opinion, is not trying to rip money out of people. They give some really great features for free, but then they come up with some really worthwhile paid solutions. And I think this is one of them that like I'll be honest, I'm going to be pushing in my environment that somehow we can get something like this, because I really want to try it in that e-learning course I was telling you about with faculty.
Right.
I think it'd be really cool to have something like this to be able to respond back to the faculty members.
And as I recall, like even for their paid, they're not gonna destroy your bank. Like if it's just
No,
a
it was
one-person
super. I'm
team or a small
surprised how cheap
team,
they were.
so
Yeah.
you can get these premium features and create just what I think it opens up is the ceiling of creativity. You've got so much you can do now with your learning content, with your support resources. Like it's worth the cost if you have to pay. Like there might be a lot you can do with the free version. Once you get to the open-ended chat agent, you may have to pay, but I think it's a worthwhile adventure. So definitely.
Yeah.
I love that Josh is still in the midst of some of these things, because I didn't even notice this one, and it's a really good resource for everybody to have. So
Yeah, and that's to just a real quick note on the ElevenLabs thing. The project Will and I are talking about, that was a paid version we used for that, and it was super cheap. Like we used it for 4 courses that were like 120 slides each and a lot of text. Like we're not talking a little bit of text. We were full conversational avatars.
We had hundreds of files.
Yeah, it was hundreds and hundreds of files. So like that was all with a pretty cheap paid version. Now I don't know what their conversational. I didn't look into the pricing before. Full transparency. We learned about this. I finished looking into it today and just posted to Will, forget what we were going to talk about. Today we're talking about this because it's way cooler than what we were originally going to talk about. So make sure to check it out. I just put down the links in our notes, so you'll definitely see that on our episode notes for this episode.
Awesome. All right, thanks, dude. This is another episode of the High Tech Podcast. Woohoo! We completed episode 180. As always, make sure you go subscribe, like, share, and all those good things. That's on the bottom of the screen. I'll say them all in a second because I skipped the other part, which is next episode is going to be episode 181. We're going to actually beg the question, when is it okay to use AI? And maybe when is it not okay to use AI in work or for a professional purpose, right? We talked about some options today that you can do, but let's think about what should you do, a little bit more. The ethics, going to play around with that. And we're going to take a look at Claude. Claude is fine.
I love that you didn't know it was great. You said it right the first time and then immediately ruined it by saying it 2 different ways. It was great.
I was pretty sure it was Claude, but I just wanted to.
It could be. It's Claude.
Claude.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully next episode we've had a little more sleep and are a little more sane for all of your sakes. But tune into that then. And then, as has been scrolling on the bottom of the screen, follow us, like us, subscribe to us, all the things at YouTube, Spotify, Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, I don't know, spaceship, something or other, Blue Sky. We're not on that, but find us at High Tech Pod, at High Tech Podcast. You can send us an email, inbox at hightechpod.us at any time to tell you to send us a message and say how crazy I am. Or if you want to join the podcast, sponsor us, send us free money, make us buy something like a hoverboard. Apparently,
a better exit to the podcast than what's happening right now.
Crash and burn. All right, folks, this is a wrap on another week of the High Tech Podcast. Empowering minds,
embracing tech. Cheers.